Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS College Football Week 9 Saturday. Same as the other weekends. Going to get through as many games as I can. Not going to get to them all. No live show in the morning. I don't have time. I have a few things I need to take care of late tonight. So no live show in the morning. We will be back for the NFL live show 11 a.m. Sunday morning. So yeah, going to get through as many games as I can. Let's do it. I mean, is Cooper Rush worth 2.5 points? I would hope Quinn Ewers put up a decent stat line against Arizona State. If he didn't, we have a real problem.
You can say the same thing about Creighton. Okay, they had the one good game against Kansas at home.
When Toast talks about the kicking market, it's like some earth is flat shit. Andy, true or false, this is going to be a dog walking.
Dog walking. This is my dog walking of the day. I think it's going to be very ugly. Dog walking. I think this is going to be ugly.
Hey, get the sauce. Syracuse, Georgia Tech. So I think it's safe to say that Ricky Collins isn't really working at quarterback for Syracuse. Remember, their original quarterback was Steve Angeli. He went down for the season, so he's out for the year. Ricky Collins takes over, who he was battling for the job in camp. He's originally an LSU recruit, so I think hopes were still high. The Syracuse offenses looked pretty terrible, and their star wide receiver, Jonte Cook, his uncle even called in the Syracuse radio station. There's a lot going on over there, and since Steve Angeli has gone down, the Syracuse offense, they're averaging 11.3 points per game, 4.44 yards per play, success rate under 35%. So it's really looked ugly here offensively for Syracuse since losing their quarterback. Now, they might be getting Justin Ross Simmons back, which is one of their wide receivers. So maybe that helps. But if I'm being honest, the way the offense looks, I don't think that moves the needle much. You look at the season-long numbers, and it doesn't look too bad for Syracuse. 86 in success rate, 89th in PPA per play. But you got to keep in mind this includes the first few games before Angeli got hurt. Since he's gone down, like I said, the offenses look completely different. Georgia Tech's actually been a bit vulnerable to the pass, and I still do trust Jeff Nixon as a play caller. He's definitely capable of scheming up a creative passing attack, so maybe Syracuse is able to throw something together. I mean, maybe there's a path here. It's not like Georgia Tech's defense is elite or anything, but based on what we've seen, it's tough to envision Syracuse moving the ball much in this game. And to make matters worse, if you take a look at Georgia Tech's defensive game logs on the year, their numbers against the pass as a whole don't look too great. But if you actually look at the game logs, they really struggled against the pass in 2 games, against Clemson and Duke. Duke's got one of the most explosive passing attacks in the country right now, and you just can't even put the current rendition of the Syracuse passing attack on the same level as Clemson and Duke. They actually played pretty solid defense against the pass in their other games. So, yeah, I think it's tough to count on Syracuse to score points here, even though that's been an offense the last year and a half that's been pretty good. They don't look very good right now. On the other side of the ball, the situation doesn't get much better for Syracuse here. I mean, this defense has really struggled this year, and Georgia Tech's probably the strongest offense in the ACC. You can see in the graphic, the message is pretty clear. 105th in success rate, 112th in PPA per play. Georgia Tech's offense, 18th and 28th. So, yeah, Georgia Tech should be able to move the ball in this game. The Syracuse defense suffered a few key injuries. Linebacker Derek McDonald, he's out for the year. He's been out for a few weeks now. Defensive tackle Rashard Perry is also out for the season. He's been out for a few weeks now. Also, weirdly enough, Syracuse has actually just played 2 very efficient defensive games back-to-back. In their last 2 games, 35% success rate, 4.83 yards per play. Not really sure what to make of that. I mean, they played SMU and Pitt as well. Fran Brown is a defensive coach, so maybe the Syracuse defense is finally coming around. Not really sure what to do with this data right here, because the Syracuse defense had looked so terrible for the first 5 games of the year, and it was so terrible last year. So now they're missing 2 starters, and out of nowhere, they start playing some defense. I'm not really sure what to do with that data. Regardless, I don't think it matters because Georgia Tech's offense is so efficient. They had that one scary game on the road against Wake Forest where the offense was sputtering a little bit. 4.84 yards per play, success rate under 39%. They seem to have gotten their shit together, though, in the last 2 games. 53.6% success rate, over 7 yards per play. That was against Virginia Tech and Duke. So Georgia Tech's offense seems to be back on track. I mean, anything under 20, I would have to lean towards the Georgia Tech side. I also don't hate an under here. Really think Syracuse is going to struggle to score, and based on what we've seen defensively, maybe they're able to slow Georgia Tech down and limit some explosive plays, make Georgia Tech work for it. So Georgia Tech minus 16.5, under 53.5. That's where I'd go with this one. UCLA Indiana. So apparently there's a chance of rain in this one, 50 to 60% chance. So those of you playing the weather game could see some rain in this one. As far as the matchup, good news for UCLA. It looks like Nico is going to play. It also looks like Javian Thomas is going to play. That's their main running back there. Both have been fully practiced. Or actually, I think Nico's limited in practice, but Javian Thomas is fully practicing. The strength of this UCLA offense is obviously running the ball. It has been for several weeks now. It's just really hard to envision UCLA going on the road and running the ball on a Cignetti defense. Cignetti's had an elite run defense. This dates back to James Madison. Remember, Cignetti at James Madison had one of the best run defenses in the country. So I just can't see UCLA going into Indiana and running the ball in this Hoosiers defense. Now, Indiana's defense did just take a loss. Their edge rusher, Kellen Wyatt, he's out for the season, so that's one of their starters. I'm not sure if that's enough to expect UCLA to move the ball on this Indiana defense. Look at their numbers against the run in Big Ten play so far this year. Illinois, Iowa, Oregon, Michigan State, they're allowing 2.37 yards per carry. I mean, there's not a path to UCLA. Maybe, you know what? No one expected UCLA to beat Penn State. It's college football. Anything's possible. But you're not going to find much on paper to indicate UCLA's going into Indiana and running the football on this defense. You're just not going to find anything on paper that indicates that. Now, I do think this UCLA offense is better than what they showed us last week. That was a pretty disappointing game offensively. I mean, 5.9 yards per play is actually pretty good, but success rate under 40% and held to 20 points at home against a Maryland team that was flying across the country. UCLA, that should have been an easy spot for UCLA, and they really struggled. They really struggled to put points up against Maryland. In their previous two games, this offense had started to look really good. Against Penn State and Michigan State, they averaged 40 points per game. Success rate up close to 50%. So maybe you could say UCLA's offense bounces back, but if it wasn't, they're playing Indiana. So just a bad matchup for UCLA. They need to run the ball, and just nobody runs the ball on Cignetti. So yeah, I don't love the matchup for UCLA's offense. Now, on the other side of the ball, I mean, obviously you look at this graphic and it looks ugly for UCLA's defense. They're 132nd in success rate, 110th in PPA per play. Indiana, one of the most efficient offenses in the entire country. So you look at this graphic and you're thinking boat race, and I don't blame you for thinking that. Do want to point out that UCLA's defense has been playing better. We'll get into that in a second. But on paper, based on what we've seen so far this year, Indiana should score points at home in this one. I mean, Mendoza's got he's got a passer rating over 142 this year when given a clean pocket. A passer rating over 142. UCLA doesn't have a pass rush, so he should have plenty of clean pockets to throw from. Yeah, I mean, Indiana should score. Do want to point out, though, I want to give UCLA a little bit of credit. They played their two best defensive games of the year by far, back-to-back now. Against Michigan State and Maryland, they held them to under 4.4 yards per play, 15 points allowed per game. By far, their two best defensive games of the year. So this UCLA defense is definitely playing much better than their numbers show. The problem is, just like I was saying about their offense, I mean, they're on the road against Indiana. It's just such a tough spot. And Cignetti has shown us he loves to blow out these lower-tier Big Ten teams. He showed it to us all last year. So I think this is a blowout, man. Maybe it's rainy and then there's like a sloppy game and UCLA finds a way to make it competitive. But if I'm betting this one, I'm laying it. I think they might really put it on them. Virginia, North Carolina, and question, is North Carolina a defense we have to respect now? I mean, first of all, their defense hasn't been nearly as bad as perceived. There's a couple things that go into our perception of North Carolina's defense. One is they opened the season in a primetime game against TCU. We all watched. They got absolutely cooked. First impressions are huge in sports, especially football. We all watched them get cooked by TCU. And all of us were like, well, this team sucks. This defense sucks. And that was kind of our first impression of North Carolina's defense. The second thing that might be distorting our view of this defense is the offense has been so bad. It's been putting the defense in rough situations, and they've been losing football games. So what's kind of been flying under the radar is North Carolina's actually been playing some decent defense as of late. On the season, they're 79th in success rate, 63rd in PPA per play. Really nice looking numbers against the run. And this Virginia offense, they really lit up some bad defenses early in the season. If you look at their numbers from their first four games, they played Coastal. That's a terrible team. I mean, NC State's defense is really having a rough year. I think they played William and Mary. I wrote FCS on the graphic. And then they played Stanford. In those four games, they were averaging over 45 points per game. They were lighting it up. Now that we've gotten into ACC play, well, Stanford's ACC, but now that we've gotten into some tougher ACC opponents, Washington State's in there as well. I mean, we're seeing the efficiency numbers come way down here for Virginia's offense, under 4.8 yards per play. Now, they've been winning football games, so it hasn't really been talked about, but this offense hasn't looked nearly as efficient in the last few games. There is some good news here, though. If you're a Virginia fan, starting center Brady Wilson is set to return, and these splits, they're exactly when he went down. Brady Wilson got injured in the 4th game of the year. So if you're looking at these splits, that's exactly when they lost their starting center, and now he's coming back. Now, I don't think the drop-off in offensive production is all on the center being out. Obviously, there's more factors. They played some tougher opponents. They played Florida State. They played Louisville. But getting the starting center back is clearly huge for Virginia. So they do get their starting center back, or they're set to get him back, I should say. College football injuries are crazy. I'm sure he could still get ruled out, but it looks like he is coming back for Virginia. And talking about this North Carolina defense, look at their numbers against the run week 1 against TCU. They allowed over 7.3 yards per carry, 60% success rate per rush. TCU cooked this team in the opener. Well, like I said before, what's not being talked about is nobody's run the ball in this North Carolina defense since. Nobody. No one's run the ball on this team since that TCU game. 3.25 yards per carry allowed in their last 3. That's against UCF, Clemson, and Cal. This North Carolina team is such a mess that, like, highlighting one bright spot of it may be a moot point, but nobody's run the ball in North Carolina since that TCU game. And the reason I think that's significant, there's going to be a lot of, we're talking about laying double digits on the road here in a game where Virginia might not be able to run the ball, and running the ball is how they won that Florida State game. Chandler Morris, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to make throws in this game, and I'm sure he'll make some. Chandler Morris is a great college quarterback, but he hasn't been very efficient throwing the football recently. In his last 3 games, QB ratings under 80. He's been under a lot of pressure. He's averaging 185.7 passing yards per game. So, I mean, you really want to lay 10.5 on the road based on Chandler Morris throwing the ball? Have you seen how he's looked the last few games? It hasn't been very efficient. Remember, the plays he was making in the Florida State game, he was mostly making with his legs. And that drive they had to win the game, they were handing the ball off. It wasn't with his arm. So I actually think North Carolina could play a solid defensive game here. The problem is on the other side of the ball, and this is why Virginia's laying such a big number. This North Carolina offense, man, it's broken. It's hilariously bad. They're 121st in success rate, 127th in PPA per play. I mean, I don't even think Virginia's defense is particularly good. I mean, they've struggled against the run. This is a below average ACC defense. Not sure if it matters. I don't know if we can count on North Carolina to move the ball against anybody. I mean, you look at Virginia's last 3 games, the offense hasn't been efficient. They've won the game with turnovers and timely stops, and their defensive numbers don't look great in those last 3 games. Success rate over 46%. So Virginia is struggling to get off the field defensively. Again, it just comes down to, do you think North Carolina can figure it out and get the ball in the end zone a couple times? They should have won last week against Cal. I think North Carolina's defense can keep them in this game. Remember, we saw a ton of sharp action coming in on North Carolina late last week. Cal was over 10, closed at 7.5. So some influential people were hammering North Carolina late. I think we're going to see this one close below 10 at 9.5. So I'm on North Carolina. Give me the points. Tar Heels. Defense needs to keep me in this one. South Florida, Memphis. This is a huge game in the AAC. It would have been the game of the year if Memphis didn't just take an ugly upset loss to UAB last week. So because Memphis took that loss to UAB, they're now in a situation where their season's over if they don't win. Well, not over. They'll still play in a bowl game, but their chances of playing the AAC championship game are gone if they lose this game. So this is a do or die here for Memphis, matched up against South Florida that's looked extremely strong. They look so strong against North Texas, beat them up badly on the road there. So this is a huge game in this conference. Game of the year, like I said. Now, obviously, the lead story is the quarterback situation for Memphis. Brendan Lewis goes down injured in the UAB game last week. So when we're looking at these numbers, the Memphis offense, the year-long numbers against the South Florida defense, we have to keep in mind that Brendan Lewis was playing quarterback for all of these games. On the season, Memphis is 24th in success rate, 23rd in PPA. South Florida, they've been playing great defense all year, as we've talked about. 32nd and 21st against a really strong schedule. So do we think Brendan Lewis is going to be able to go at quarterback for Memphis? I mean, the line movement makes me think probably no, or at least the market is leaning towards no. No decision's been made. He's still listed as a game time decision. If he doesn't play, I would imagine we'll see A.J. Hill. And this is interesting because coming into the season, I actually thought that A.J. Hill would be starting by this point. He's a 4-star recruit. He's very highly touted. He was supposed to be the next guy. He got offers from some big-time programs. He chose Memphis. He's more of a passer than Brendan Lewis, who's more of a scrambler. So we saw him come into the UAB game last week. They were down 24-14 when he came in. He did throw a bad interception, but he also made a few good throws, including there was a 4th and 7 when the game was on the line. He made a nice throw. He definitely gives Memphis more of a passing attack than Brendan Lewis does. But Brendan Lewis has been doing so much with his athleticism this year. I'm not sure if A.J. Hill gives you that. The point I'm making is coming into the season, I thought A.J. Hill would be the starter now. So I don't necessarily know how much of a drop-off there is from Brendan Lewis to A.J. Hill. Brendan Lewis has looked so much better than I expected this year. I wasn't blown away with how he played at Nevada last year. Transferred to Memphis, I was kind of surprised he's not the typical Silverfield quarterback. It's really worked. Memphis has had more of a rushing offense this year than in years past, so it's actually looked pretty good. A.J. Hill would give them a little bit of a different look, kind of more similar to what we're used to from Memphis all those years with Hennefield at quarterback. So, yeah, I'm not sure how much of a drop-off there is. It is a freshman on the road against this South Florida – oh, not on the road. I'm sorry, they're at home. It is a freshman against this South Florida defense, and if you've been following along with South Florida's season so far, you know this defense has been excellent. They got lit up one time on the road at Hard Rock against Miami, who's lit up a lot of good defenses. In their other 5 FBS games, they're allowing less than 20 points per game, under 4.7 yards per play, success rate at 37.3%, excellent defensive numbers here, and that includes games against Boise, against Florida, against North Texas. They've seen some good offenses. This defense is official. So A.J. Hill, I do think he has a high upside in terms of talent, but this is not the defense you want your freshman making his first career start against. And the thing is, when it comes to this Memphis offense, I was just talking about how battle-tested the South Florida defense is, right? The Memphis offense isn't nearly as battle-tested. I mean, in fact, where are the good defenses that Memphis has seen so far this year? On the road against Troy, Troy's a strong defense. Other than that, Arkansas can't stop anybody. FAU's terrible. Tulsa's terrible. UAB's terrible, and they beat them outright. So in terms of the Memphis offense against the South Florida defense, looks like a tough matchup for Memphis because South Florida's battle-tested. They played all these strong offenses. Meanwhile, Memphis has kind of racked up some really nice offensive numbers against some bad defenses, and they might not have their quarterback for this game. So I do understand the live movement, and I do understand why some people are concerned for this Memphis offense coming into this one. It's actually on the other side of the ball. This is where I think Memphis can put up a fight because this South Florida offense, we're kind of all remembering the last few games, right? Their numbers on the season, 54th in success rate, 27th in PPA per play. Remember, rewind 3 weeks ago, these numbers did not look that great. Memphis has some really nice numbers against the run, and South Florida's an offense that wants to run the ball. You look at South Florida's offensive numbers, you split it up. The first 3 games, the last 3 games. Sure, they've been lighting the scoreboard up in their last 3 games. 55 points per game, success rate over 51%. They've been lighting the scoreboard up against FAU, terrible defense, Charlotte, terrible team, and then North Texas, who not the strongest defense. In their first 3 games, when they actually saw some stronger defenses, the offensive numbers didn't look great at all. Success rate under 35%, 21.3 points per game. This South Florida defense has looked far more impressive than the South Florida offense so far this year. And if you're thinking, well, Kyle, that's against Boise, Florida, and Miami. Yeah, that's fair. Those are some powerful programs, but Memphis defensively, they're going to be closer to the programs on the right of this graphic than the programs on their left. I mean, Memphis, in terms of resources, they're pretty loaded up for a group of 5 program. So this Memphis defense is going to be closer to the programs on the right. South Florida is also playing this game without their main wide receiver, Chaz Nimrod. He's most likely going to be out. He was injured in the North Texas game, didn't play last week, so they're going to be missing their main receiver. I think Memphis defensively can really put up a fight here. I know the defense didn't play well last week. It was on the road against UAB. I get it. It was UAB with a backup quarterback. It's a terrible look, but other than that, they've been rock solid defensively, and this might have been a little bit of a look-ahead spot for Memphis. I mean, you're playing UAB with an interim head coach and a backup quarterback. probably didn't really know what to expect from this team. Then they come out and put 24 points up fast, and you have to come back. So, yeah, I think this is just a little bit of a flat spot for the Memphis defense. I think Memphis is going to play a good defensive game, which is why if I was forced to bet this one, it would be the under. The problem is the number is cooked. I mean, I had Step on a Duck on as a guest. He's on the under at 63.5. It's at 58.5 now, so the number's long gone, but honestly, I would still lean towards the under at the current number as well. Ole Miss, Oklahoma. So it looks like the weather's going to be okay. We talked about this game earlier in the week, and I had mentioned that I read there was a chance of rain. It looks like the weather's going to be okay here, which in my opinion favors Ole Miss. If you listen to the live stream with Step on a Duck, we talked about this game, and I mentioned I was leaning towards Ole Miss, and my opinion hasn't changed on that. I really want to bet this. I haven't as of right now. Look, this Oklahoma team, well, actually, let's start with Ole Miss offense. First of all, it looked excellent last week on the road in Athens. They put up 35 points. Yes, they lost. They didn't cover the number. Shout out to Ole Miss for getting me the over there. That was a sweat-free one. But if you look at their offensive numbers in that one, Chambliss played great. They averaged over 5.8 yards per play, 50% success rate on the offensive side of the ball. Was a great offensive performance from Ole Miss. Now, obviously, we have to point out that this year's Georgia defense has had its problems. In fact, you can't even compare it to this year's Oklahoma defense. Oklahoma, on paper, is the best defense in college football. They're first in success rate, first in PPA per play. Meanwhile, we've seen Georgia have all kinds of problems on the defensive side, specifically in the secondary. So especially when you look at a graphic like this that compares Georgia's defense to Oklahoma's defense, you can't even compare them. And I completely understand that. My issue with the Oklahoma defense is they're not battle-tested at all. And if you put Oklahoma's defense up next to Ole Miss's offense, we could have ourselves a battle here. Ole Miss, 14th in success rate, 16th in PPA per play. This has looked like one of the more explosive offenses in college football. And when you look at Oklahoma's defensive game logs, yes, it looks elite, but I have to ask, who the hell have they played? In all seriousness, even if you're an Oklahoma fan, I want you to point at that list and point out who the toughest offense they've seen so far this year. Is it Michigan? Is that the best offense they've seen? Is a home game against Michigan, who, by the way, had a freshman quarterback making his second career start and his first career road start. Is that your toughest test? Bryce Underwood in his first career road start as a freshman? Or maybe it's Auburn, an offense that has looked pedestrian as hell all year? Or maybe it's Texas, an offense that is averaging, 4 yards per play in SEC play with Arch Manning? Who is the toughest test here for Oklahoma? They haven't played a single... I'm going to go as far as to say they haven't even played a decent offense yet. Now, I'm not trying to downplay Oklahoma's defense. Coming into the season, I said they had the best defensive line in college football. So by no means am I trying to tell you that Oklahoma's defense is bad. I'm just saying it might be a little bit overvalued. I think they're going to be missing a corner in this game as well. Gentry Williams got injured in the South Carolina game. That's one of their starting corners. He's listed as questionable. So they might be missing a corner in this game as well, and this defense just hasn't been tested at all. Meanwhile, when it comes to the Ole Miss offense, they have been tested. They saw LSU's a respectable defense. They saw Georgia, who the defense hasn't been great this year, but that's still a road game in Athens. They went on the road to Kentucky, which is a decent defense. Tulane's got an okay defense. I'm not saying Ole Miss has been through the gauntlet, but Ole Miss offense, and compared to Oklahoma's defense, way more battle-tested. And Trinidad Chambliss, his numbers under pressure, his numbers against the blitz, I'm not saying, he's going to go in there and handle Oklahoma's defensive front. Of course not. They're elite. But if there is a quarterback on paper that looks like they're equipped to handle a defensive line like Oklahoma, it might be Trinidad Chambliss. I mean, on paper, he might be more equipped to handle this kind of defensive front than any other quarterback. He's one of the most efficient quarterbacks in college football this year under pressure. So I think all signs point to maybe Ole Miss is able to make some plays in this game. I think Ole Miss might be able to move the ball a little bit. Of course, I'm not expecting an offensive explosion on the road in Norman against one of the best defenses in the country. I'm just saying, don't be surprised if we see Ole Miss moving the ball on Oklahoma's defense in a way we haven't seen an offense move the ball on them yet. I think Ole Miss is able to get the ball in the end zone a couple times in this game. Now, on the other side of the ball... There's just more uncertainty here. So the Ole Miss defense hasn't been good, specifically the defensive front. They're 120th in success rate per rush, 122nd in PPA per rush. But I mean, I could argue that Oklahoma's offense looks just as disappointing. I know the numbers don't look as bad, but this offensive line is a mess. Remember, they lost their starting left tackle, Jacob Sexton, and their starting center, Troy Everett, in week 1. They're both out for the season. Also, another one of their offensive tackles, Logan Howland. He started a few games. He's also injured. It's uncertain if he's going to play. Their right tackle, Derek Simmons, is healthy and back. So he was injured before he's back. He left the Texas game hurt, but he ended up playing against South Carolina. So, I mean, this offensive line's a mess. They haven't been able to run the ball at all. Look at Oklahoma's rushing numbers in their SEC games. Now, Ole Miss has struggled against the run, and I'm not suggesting they're going to shut down Oklahoma's run game, but in their 3 SEC games, Oklahoma's averaging 2.7 yards per carry. 2.7, 35% success rate per rush. And remember, this offense couldn't run the ball last year either. So, look, again, Ole Miss has struggled against the run. I don't know if I trust Oklahoma to run the ball. They haven't run the ball in 2 years. And when it comes to Ole Miss defense, they might be a little bit undervalued also. They got lit up against Georgia. They got lit up against Arkansas. Those 2 offenses seem to be lighting up whoever they see, Georgia and Arkansas. If you take out those 2 games, Ole Miss defensive numbers actually don't look bad. In their other 5 games, if you take out Arkansas and Georgia, they're allowing 16 points per game, 4.82 yards per play, 35.2% success rate. So the Ole Miss defense has actually played pretty well outside of the 2 games against electric offenses that seem to be scoring 40 points on everybody. So I think this Ole Miss defense is a little bit undervalued. It's not that I'm expecting Ole Miss to go on the road to Norman and win outright, but at 5.5, I don't think this should be above a field goal, maybe 3.5 max. So yeah, I'm really considering betting Ole Miss plus 5.5 here. I think this game comes down to the wire, to the last possession. So, yeah, Rebels up. Haven't bet it yet, but I'm considering it. SMU Wake Forest. So this SMU passing attack hasn't been quite as explosive as last year, but does seem to be finding its stride a bit. Granted, it looks like Kevin Jennings re-aggravated that same ankle injury. I think he's okay. He's been limping around in a few of the games this year, and then he was limping in last week's game. So, obviously, Kevin Jennings' health has to be a topic of discussion here. It does seem to be coming around a little bit. I mean, they are 47th in success rate per dropback, 23rd in PPA per dropback. So I guess the question we need to ask is, these Wake Forest defensive numbers, are they for real? I mean, this is a top 15 defense on paper so far this year, 11th in success rate, 15th in PPA per play. Absolutely elite numbers against the pass. When you look at their game logs on the year, so the question is this Wake Forest defense for real? I think the answer is kinda. I mean, the numbers are legitimate, but we do have to point out that they haven't seen a ton of electric offenses. Their toughest tests defensively would be NC State and Georgia Tech. Those would be the 2 strongest offenses that Wake Forest has seen so far this year. But let's give Wake some credit. I mean, they took Georgia Tech to overtime. In that game, they held Georgia Tech, who you can make the argument is the strongest offense in the conference. They held them to 4.84 yards per play, success rate under 39%. Remember, 7 of Georgia Tech's points were scored in overtime. So held them to 23 points. So you could say, hey, this Wake Forest defense has racked up some really elite numbers against bad offenses. That'd be correct. You'd be fair in saying that. But you could also say, hey, the only time they saw an elite offense, they did a great job defensively. And that would also be a correct statement. Now, this SMU offense is built differently than the Georgia Tech offense. Georgia Tech is run first all the way. One of the more dominant rushing attacks in the country. Georgia Tech doesn't have the same explosivity through the air that SMU does. In terms of the pass defense for Wake, this will definitely be the toughest test, kind of by far. NC State can make some throws at times with TJ Bailey, but can't compare to SMU. So Wake's pass defense, Wake's secondary, this is going to be their toughest test. It really comes down to how healthy Kevin Jennings is. Like I said, he was limping last week. Also, their starting right guard, PJ Williams, also got banged up in the Clemson game. So a couple injury concerns on the offense for SMU. PJ Williams, the starting guard, is questionable for this one. This might be a bit of a challenge for Kevin Jennings. I mean, this Wake Forest defense, they've generated consistent pressure without sending a ton of blitzes. Now, Kevin Jennings has handled pressure pretty well so far this year, but maybe when the season started and we were looking at SMU's schedule, we didn't see the Wake Forest defense as much of a threat. After seeing the first handful of games here from Wake, this is a challenge for Jennings. I mean, this Wake defense definitely needs to be respected, and wouldn't be surprised to see them generate some stops in this game. The problem is, on the other side of the ball, I mean, there's no friendly way to say this. Wake Forest is a terrible offensive football team. In fact, I think these numbers are generous. 123rd in success rate, 61st in PPA per play. They've played an easy schedule and still have some weak offensive numbers. I don't even think this SMU defense is very good this year, and I still don't think they'll have problems generating stops against the Wake Forest offense. Now, Wake's going to be healthier. Quarterback Robbie Ashford missed last week. He's expected to return. And also their right tackle, Fayamore, sorry if I'm saying that name incorrectly, he missed last week's game as well, and he's expected to return. So Wake Forest a bit healthier on the offensive side of the ball. But the thing is, last week on the road against Oregon State, they were missing their quarterback and the right tackle. It's like the best offensive game they played all year when they were missing those guys. So I'm not really sure what to take away from that. I don't think this Wake Forest offense is very good, even if they get those two guys back, which they're supposed to. This is a Wake Forest offense that needs to run the football with Claiborne, who's also a bit healthier. He was banged up. They need to run the football, and SMU's defense got linebacker Alexander Kilgore back a few weeks ago. They're really starting to look strong up front against the run. They are missing an edge rusher. There's actually a couple starters on this defense that they're missing. I didn't write them down. There's a couple listed as questionable. Oh, I did write them down, actually. The corner, Jalen Davis-Robinson. Linebacker, Brandon Miliazono. Sorry if I'm saying that incorrectly. So there are some injury concerns on the SMU defense, but this Wake Forest offense is so, I don't want to say predictable, but you take away the run and Ashford or Deshaun Purdy, whoever's playing quarterback, they just can't make you pay for it. So, yeah, I don't have a ton of faith in Wake moving the ball in this one. I understand that Wake Forest is strong, but I think a flat 3, 2.5, that's just a little, that's too much respect. If you can get a 2.5, it has to be SMU. In fact, the fact that this is sitting at 3 means people are buying Wake at 3.5. It kind of leads me to believe that a lot of the questionables, a lot of the injury concerns for SMU are not going to play. So I'm a little worried about this one, but if you can get a juice 2.5, I think you've got to go Mustangs here. So it'll be SMU. I don't hate an under, but I don't like playing unders in SMU games. So yeah, give me SMU if you can get a juice 2.5. Rutgers Purdue. So this Boilermaker defense has been a bit stronger than these numbers indicate. This defense has been pretty good under Barry Odom. I know these numbers don't show it. They've played they're like the opposite of Wake, who hasn't played anybody, and their defense looks good with a new coach. Purdue's played a lot of strong offenses. The problem is they've been strongest up front against the run. Rutgers is a pass-first offense all the way. We know Rutgers is trying to throw the ball with Kaliak Manis. And look, they just lost wide receiver Ian Strong. Or actually, he's listed as questionable. That hurts. That's their star wide receiver, and he was hurt earlier in the year. When he came back, Rutgers got an immediate boost. So if Ian Strong isn't able to play, that definitely affects the Rutgers offense. But every single time this year that we've seen Purdue has faced a team that has a quarterback, they've gotten cooked through the air. I mean, USC, Notre Dame, Illinois, in those games, they allowed over 317 passing yards per game, 56.7% success rate per dropback, almost 14 yards per pass attempt. So the 3 times Purdue actually saw an elite passing attack, they got completely roasted. Now, Kaliak Manis and the Rutgers passing attack, probably not on the level of a Notre Dame or a USC or even an Altmaier in Illinois, but this is still a pretty solid Big Ten passing attack. If there's one element of Rutgers you would put on the level of the upper echelon Big Ten teams, it would be the passing attack. So I don't think there's any reason to doubt Kaliak Manis making throws and scoring points in this game. If you're worried about Kaliak Manis in a road conference game, well, he played pretty well in both of those this year. Went on the road to Minnesota, then he went out to the West Coast against Washington. Not that he set the world on fire, but he was making throws in both of those games, averaged over 317 passing yards per game in both of those games. As long as the weather's fine, which I think it will be, there were some concerns earlier in the week. As long as the weather's fine, I think we can count on Rutgers to move the ball in this game. On the other side of the ball, this is where the matchup gets interesting because we know Rutgers' defense is terrible. I mean, they're probably the worst defense in the Big Ten. 131st in success rate, 129th in PPA per play. So right off the bat, you're looking like, Purdue's going to light it up against this Rutgers defense. And I'm not necessarily saying that's not true, but Purdue is missing their quarterback, Ryan Brown. He's listed as doubtful. So most likely going to have a backup quarterback in who's a redshirt freshman making his first career start. His name's Malachi Singleton. He played most of the Northwestern game last week. They got shut out. They lost 19-0. So yeah, the quarterback is a concern here. for Purdue. Malachi Singleton, first career start. Purdue had just gotten the run game going, too. In the 2 games before the Northwestern game last week, Purdue was averaging over 6.2 yards per carry, 202 rushing yards per game. This Purdue offense was finding itself an identity. And then Ryan Brown gets hurt. What does Northwestern do? They load up the box, take away the run, make this redshirt freshman beat him over top, and he wasn't really able to. They got shut out. They were held to 3.35 yards per carry. So I guess the question becomes, is Rutgers capable of doing something like that? Because I think we all know what Rutgers is going to do here. I mean, it's a redshirt freshman making his first career start. Load up the box, make him throw it. I guess the question is, can Rutgers do that? Can Rutgers be effective doing that? Because this defense has been so bad and they're also injured. We kind of already saw a similar situation. Rutgers went on the road to Minnesota. They sold out to take away the run. They did take away the run. Drake Lindsey, a redshirt freshman, pieced them up. Now, little bit of a different situation. Drake Lindsey is the starter at Minnesota. He wasn't making his first career start. He was expected to be the starter all through camp. So he wasn't just thrown into the role. He's their starting quarterback. This is a little bit different. Malachi Singleton is not supposed to be the Purdue starting quarterback, and it's his first career start. So I think Rutgers defense can play all right against a backup quarterback making his first start. I think it's got to be Rutgers here, -1.5. I also don't hate an over. The problem is with a backup quarterback, and also the weather's worrying me a bit. It'd be Rutgers, -1.5 in this one. Northwestern Nebraska. The running back is fine, by the way. We'll start there with Northwestern. Komolafe is the Northwestern running back. He left last game injured. But from what I'm reading, he's practicing and he's going to play here. This is obviously huge news because this is a Northwestern offense that already lost their star running back, Cam Porter, earlier in the year. So if Komolafe is unable to play, they'd be down to their third string running back. And it's especially important in this matchup because that's the weakness of this Nebraska defense is defending the run. They're 63rd in success rate per rush, 102nd in PPA per rush. So Komolafe is fine and is going to play for Northwestern. And I got to say, this Northwestern run game, pleasant surprise if you're a Wildcats fan. Look at their numbers in their Big Ten games. These are their Big Ten games at 184.5 rushing yards per game, 47.4% success rate per rush, 4.39 yards per carry. Northwestern has been consistently running the ball, and Cam Porter was kind of the bright spot on this offense. I don't think we really expected the Northwestern offense to be good this year. They had a one-star running back in Cam Porter. He got injured, I want to say, in like week 2. And Northwestern's been running the ball since. So shout out to Northwestern. They've got a nice little running attack brewing there. And I know Nebraska seems to have shored things up in terms of defending the run. In their last 3 games, they're allowing less than 4 yards per carry, 35% success rate per rush. They had gotten cooked on the ground a couple times in the Michigan game and the Cincinnati game. So maybe the Nebraska defensive front 7 is coming around a little bit. But I do want to point out, they played Michigan State, Maryland, Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota has Darius Taylor, but they've been struggling to run the ball all year. Maryland can't run the ball at all. Michigan State can't run the ball at all. So, yes, Nebraska's defense has done a little bit of a better job against the run, but they also played 3 offenses that can't really run the ball. They've got injuries to the secondary as well. Northwestern is trending upwards offensively. I think Northwestern's going to move the ball in this game. I don't think this Nebraska defense is very good. We've seen it exposed a few times. I like the way Northwestern's playing. They're running the ball. Preston Stone, we know he's capable of throwing it. We know he's also capable of making huge mistakes. But I think Northwestern might be able to move the chains in this game. Now, on the other side of the ball, this is where it's a little concerning for Northwestern because Nebraska's offense is definitely good. I mean, they got a great offensive line. Raiola's playing pretty well this year. Maybe still not reaching the high expectations everyone had for him, but he can definitely throw it. And this Nebraska offense is good. They're 17th in success rate, 47th in PPA per play. But shout out to Northwestern defense starting. I mean, their year-long numbers are whatever. They've struggled against the run. But look at their last 3 Big Ten games here. I took out they played like Louisiana Monroe or something. I took that out. But look at their last 3 conference games. 11.7. They're allowing 11.7 points per game. 40.5% success rate, 5.43 yards per play. They're starting to resemble the Pat Fitzgerald Northwestern defenses. They're really playing some defense right now. And let's not pretend like we haven't seen this Nebraska offense sputter. I mean, if you look at their game logs on the year, they've been pretty fortunate with the schedule. With the exception of Michigan, I mean, Nebraska kind of avoided any elite Big Ten competition. The starting right guard, Rocco Spindler, is apparently going to play, by the way. So Rocco Spindler, that's the starting guard for Nebraska. He broke his hand on the field last week, was taken to the hospital, got surgery. I'm reading he's got a good chance of playing, so I guess he's going to have a cast on or whatever. But yeah, if you look at Nebraska's game logs here, going on the road against Minnesota, okay, that's a tough test, I guess. Minnesota hasn't been all that good, but they were struggling to move the ball in that game. They struggled against Michigan. Other than that, they played Maryland, Michigan State, Akron. Cincinnati doesn't even have a great defense. They were struggling to move the ball in that game, although Cincinnati's coming around a little bit. So, yeah, I'm not really blown away with Nebraska's body of work. I think Northwestern could give them a game here. They haven't had a ton of success. Northwestern hasn't, traveling to Lincoln. In their last 3 trips here, they've lost 3 in a row, so 3 straight losses in Lincoln. They're averaging 8.7 points per game. So Northwestern has had trouble scoring points in this building, but this is the worst Nebraska defense we've seen. Nebraska's offense is pretty good, but I don't love this Nebraska defense. I think at 7.5, it's got to be Northwestern. I didn't bet this one, but I think Northwestern at 7.5 might be a play. I think this should be a flat 7, maybe even a 6.5. So Northwestern for me. Kansas State, Kansas in the rivalry game. What is this? The Sunflower Bowl or something? Kansas State, Kansas. This has been a one-sided rivalry. For those of you unfamiliar with this rivalry, Kansas has lost 16 in a row. Yes, I said 16. 16 consecutive years with a loss to Kansas State. 0-16 straight up, 5-11 against the number. And if you're thinking, oh, well, Kyle, this one's at home. Well, it's actually even worse at home. They're 0-8 in their last 8 home games against Kansas State, just 2-6 against the spread. Now, they are favored in this one. So the market is expecting this to come to an end. They're expecting the streak to end here. Kansas State's actually laying 3.5. So they're a considerable favorite in this one. And I don't necessarily disagree with them being favored at all. I think above a 3 is kind of pushing it. And if you look at the season-long numbers, maybe it makes a little bit of sense. Kansas State offensively, 95th in success rate, 71st in PPA per play. The Kansas State year-long offensive numbers are not impressive at all. And it would actually look, based on this graphic, that, Kansas defense might be able to make some stops here. Here's the thing. Kansas State's offense has looked completely different since the bye week. We all remember the Arizona game. We all remember the Army game. They blew a lead, lost to Army, and they played Arizona and looked terrible. I believe that was a standalone game where everyone watched. So they had those 2 awful games back-to-back that everyone watched. Then they had the bye week. Since the bye week, they've been quietly playing significantly better offense. They've played 3 games, 36.3 points per game, 5.9 yards per play. So I'm not saying this is an elite offense, but they've looked considerably better in their 3 games since the bye week than they did earlier in the year. The run game's coming around. Avery Johnson making throws from a clean pocket, just not what we saw earlier in the year. This looks more like the Kansas State offense we were expecting coming into the season rather than that garbage we saw earlier in the year. So Kansas State's offense has been coming around. And this Kansas defense, it just doesn't look very good. They haven't really been tested. They haven't played a ton of elite competition. In their last 5 games, they're getting consistently run on. And I mean consistently. In their last 5 games, they're allowing over 6 yards per carry as a defense, over 245 rushing yards per game, 47.4% success rate per rush. Now, if you're on Kansas in this one, you're probably looking at the injury report. There's some great news for Kansas on this front. All right, Kansas defense. They should be getting back Joseph Sipp Jr., who's their linebacker and one of their main guys. He's missed 3 or 4 games this year. He should be coming back. So big linebacker back there for the Kansas defense. Safety Devin Dye is expected to return. I believe he's missed the last 2 games as well. Cornerback Saeed Gibbs is expected to return. He's missed 2 or 3 games himself. So 3 starters coming back on the defense for Kansas. And that's probably what people are looking at, that bet this off of 3 up to 3.5. They're probably liking the matchup here for Kansas defensively because Kansas defenses look really shaky. They've been missing key starters. In fact, for a lot of the season, they've been missing key starters. So maybe they're thinking Kansas defense gets some pieces back, and against a Kansas State offense that isn't very good, they can make some stop. Oh, by the way, Kansas State also going to be missing their star running back Dylan Edwards in this game. So I think the sharp bettors that have bet this number off of 3 up to 3.5, I think they're looking at the injury report, and honestly, it makes sense because Kansas defense is healthier, Kansas State offense missing their star running back. Here's the thing. Despite being at full strength, I still don't think this is a good defense. I don't trust the secondary. They haven't played the toughest of his competition. They still don't look very good. So I still think Kansas State can move the ball on Kansas defense despite the injuries. So I kind of don't care. I shouldn't say I don't care. Maybe Kansas defense plays slightly better than what we've seen, but Kansas State's offense looks pretty good, and I just don't think Kansas has the horses on defense to make stops in this game. Now, on the other side, we know the Jayhawks offense can score. Nobody ever questioned that. Jalen Daniels is wildly talented. This is an explosive offense. They're 21st in success rate, 31st in PPA per play. But we don't want to just sleep on this Kansas State defense. This is a pretty strong unit. I'm not worried about the last couple games for Kansas. Kind of a couple shaky offensive games in a row there. 22 points per game in their last two, just under 5.1 yards per play. I'm not really worried. We know Daniels can play, and in the rivalry game at home, he's going to be up for it. So not really worried about those two game logs. What I'm worried about for Kansas is the body of work here. I believe Duck was on the live show last night, actually, and what he said was, show me on the map, which of these is Kansas' best win? What's Kansas' best win of the year? You got Fresno State. That was Entz making his debut as the new head coach with basically a brand new roster there in his first game ever on the road against Kansas. So, okay. Then they played Wagner. Their third win was against West Virginia. That was at home against a bad West Virginia team, an injured West Virginia team coming off the backyard brawl. They immediately played the game of their season before that. They immediately flew to Kansas for this one. So, all right, that's not really an impressive win there. And their fourth win was against UCF. They had to come from behind to win that game. UCF had their third string quarterback. So they don't have a single impressive win. And look, I understand Kansas being favored 1.5. I might even consider Kansas, but 3.5, even with the injury report, there's no way. It would only be Kansas State. Honestly, I don't hate an under. And early in the week, when I first looked at this game, I was thinking over. But the more I looked at it, the more I consider that neither of these teams play particularly fast paces. The injury report, Kansas gets pieces back on defense. Kansas State missing Dylan Edwards. I actually think this might be an under game now. So originally, I was leaning towards the over, but now my picks for this game would be Kansas State plus 3.5 and under 55. There's a flat 56, under 56. FAU Navy in Annapolis, and as soon as I looked at this game, I was leaning over. The more I looked into it, the more it was just over. So right off the bat, we know FAU plays at a lightning pace. Remember, their coach is Kitley, comes from Texas Tech, fast pace, throw the ball a lot. That's what they do at Texas Tech. He's brought that right over to FAU with them. They're first in pace, fourth in passing frequency. So we know what FAU does. They move at an extremely fast pace. They throw the ball a lot. Navy, second in run frequency. They run a slow pace, though. So FAU passes a lot. Navy runs a lot. Those happen to be the weaknesses of both these defenses. Check it out. So on the season, Navy is 88th in success rate per dropback, 114th in PPA per dropback. You might think, well, Kyle, that's not too bad. Check it out. If you look at Navy's defensive game logs, how many passing attacks have they seen? The answer, 1. UAB is the only team they've played that throws the ball. Tulsa also, but remember, that was the backup quarterback, Baylor Hayes. It was his first career start, the Tulsa game. UAB threw the ball all over Navy. In their last two games, they've allowed 297 passing yards per game, 50% success rate per dropback, over 11 yards per pass attempt in their last two games. Why are these games significant? It's against Air Force and Temple. Those are two run-first offenses. So Navy secondary is really struggling to cover people. They've got run-first offenses making throws on them at an extremely efficient rate. Caden Veldkamp seems to be getting it together. I know he struggled a bit last week on the road in South Florida. South Florida's got the best defense in the conference. There's a lot of quarterbacks that would struggle in South Florida. We saw Boise struggling to score there. So, yeah, he struggled a little bit on the road against a very strong defense. The previous two games before that, it looked like Caden Veldkamp was getting it together. He's starting to get comfortable in Kitley's system, and this offense is starting to work. Look how efficient his numbers are in the two games before the South Florida game. Over 294 passing yards per game, a 119.7 NFL passer rating. So, yeah, I think Florida Atlantic can score points on this Navy defense. I don't think the secondary is very good. We didn't expect this Navy secondary to be very good coming into the season. They haven't really been tested either, and their numbers against the pass still look bad. Now, if you're trying to lay the big number with Navy, you're probably looking at the line of scrimmage here. One thing Navy has done a decent job at is pressuring the passer. And Caden Velkamp has struggled under pressure. So I get that. FAU also lost their starting right guard, Alex Atkovich. I hope I'm saying that right. He got injured a few weeks ago. So maybe Navy's pass rush can disrupt a few things. I could see that. But, man, Kitley comes from Texas Tech. The ball is out of Velkamp's hands quickly. This is a 2.48 seconds. So it's not really a drop back and stand in the pocket type of offense. This is quick hits. I think it's a type of offense that has the ability to neutralize the pass rush to some extent. Navy's secondary can't seem to cover anybody. So, yeah, I think FAU could move the ball in this game. And on the other side, what are we expecting FAU's defense to do against the Navy run game? I mean, they're on paper, they're the most efficient rushing attack in college football. First in success rate per rush, first in PPA per play. So, of course, Navy at home should not have problems scoring on the FAU defense. Now, Navy runs a very slow pace, which could kill an over, right? I mean, slow pace and running the ball, chewing the clock, that could be a concern. But what else does Navy do? Not just this year, last year as well. Explosive plays. They're 20th in college football on explosive play rate. FAU's defense has been allowing a lot of explosive plays. And on the other side, FAU, top 10 in the country in explosive plays. Navy's defense, 118th in explosive plays allowed. So I think we're going to see big plays back and forth. Yeah, I think this is a shootout. So 62.5 still sitting there. Give me that over. I think I'm going to bet this. I didn't bet this yet, but just talking about that made me want to bet it. Yeah, over 62.5. I may add this one. NC State Pittsburgh. So we know this Pittsburgh defense is strong. They're 5th in success rate, 33rd in PPA per play. We know that Pitt has an elite defense. They've had injuries in the secondary this year, and this is what I think about the Pitt defense. Let me start over. This is what I think about the Pitt defense. They're absolutely elite against the run. I mean, on paper, they're a top 5 run defense. I honestly think, just schedule adjusted, they'd still be top 10 or top 15. It's a very strong run defense. They were a very strong run defense last year. They brought back most of their defensive front 7. I trust this Pittsburgh run defense. The problem is, this NC State offense can't really run the ball anyway. This is not a downhill running offense. This is an offense that's entirely centered around C.J. Bailey, their quarterback. He likes to scramble out of the pocket, make throws, make plays with his legs. This is not a handed off between the tackles type of offense. So even though Pitt's defense is elite, NC State might be equipped to actually make some plays and get the ball up and down the field on this Pitt defense. This is an NC State offense that should be healthier at the wide receiver position. Their main wide receiver is Terrell Anderson. He's expected to play. He was banged up in the Notre Dame game, but they had a bye week. NC State's coming off a bye week, and he should be ready to go. Same goes for their wide receiver 3, Noah Rogers. He missed the Notre Dame game. He should be back on the field. So NC State healthier at wide receiver. And C.J. Bailey has really played well in conference so far this year. I mean, look at their ACC games. Virginia technically wasn't a conference game, but they're in the ACC. Virginia, Wake, Duke, Virginia Tech. Averaging over 251 passing yards per game. Efficient passing numbers. He's handled pressure well. I think C.J. Bailey can score on this Pitt defense. Now, again, not that this Pitt defense is playing poorly, but I mean, look at their numbers in ACC play. They've been playing great defense, but they're dealing with serious injuries on this side of the ball. So in addition to NC State maybe being a bit of a challenging matchup for this defense, their all-conference linebacker and arguably best player on the team, Kyle Lewis, left the Syracuse game and did not return. He's listed as questionable. Their leading tackler, Rasheem Biles, he didn't even play in the Syracuse game. He's listed as questionable. He was a late scratch due to an undisclosed injury last week against Syracuse. Their edge rusher, Zach Crothers, he's going to miss his 4th straight game. This is a Pitt defense that has serious injury concerns this week. I think NC State can score points in this game. And on the other side, I think Pittsburgh can score points right back. I've been saying it all year that I don't think this NC State defense is very good. I know the year-long numbers make them look okay. 20th in success rate, 85th in PPA per play. But look who NC State has played so far this year. I mean, what respectable offenses have they seen? ECU is a decent offense. Virginia is pretty good. Duke, Notre Dame, right? Those are the 4 respectable offenses that NC State's defense has seen. Look at their defensive numbers in those games. They're allowing over 32 points per game, over 6.5 yards per play. Their linebacker, Sean Brown, he's one of the team's leading tacklers. He's going to miss his 3rd straight game. Remember, this is a team that already lost a linebacker earlier in the season in A.J. Richardson. He's been out since week 2. Their starting safety, J.J. Johnson, he's been on and off the injury report. He got injured in the Notre Dame game, and he's been ruled out. They lost another safety earlier in the year, Brody Barnhart. I hope I wrote that right. So, yeah, they're dealing with injuries. I don't believe this defense to be very good. Remember, they lost their DC. Tony Gibson's been there for like 6 years. He left to take the Marshall job this year. So this is kind of an adjustment year for the NC State defense, and they haven't had the toughest schedule. I don't believe this defense is very good. Pitt offensively didn't play that great last week against Syracuse, but this is just a testament to Cade Bell's offense. They run at such an insanely fast pace that even in a bad game, and this offense did not play good in Syracuse, they still scored 30 points because they move so quickly. In the 2 games before that, which was Heinschel, the freshman quarterback, his first 2 starts, they averaged 41 points per game over 6.2 yards per play. So they had one rocky offensive game, still scored 30 points back at home against an NC State defense that I don't think is very good. I think Pitt's going to score. Desmond Reed should be healthy and good to go. He was not even listed on the injury report. That's Pittsburgh's star playmaking running back. He's very talented. He should be good to go. Pittsburgh should be able to move the ball in this game. And if you consider that I think both offenses are going to be able to move the ball, we should see a very fast-paced game because Cade Bell's calling the plays for Pitt. Give me the over. I hit the over 54.5 early. It shot up to 57. I thought I was the man. Like, we nailed this one. It's now back down to 54.5. So there was some buyback on the under at 56.5, 57. Worries me a bit. I still think it gets over 54.5. Auburn, Arkansas. So we know this Arkansas defense isn't very good. You didn't need me to tell you that. They're 128th in success rate, 130th in PPA. We know Auburn's going to hand the ball off behind that good offensive line, and they're going to have no problems moving the chains in this game. I don't think anyone would even argue that. Arkansas also just lost their best defensive lineman, defensive tackle Cam Ball, most likely out for the season. So, yeah, Auburn's going to run the ball, and there's probably not a damn thing Arkansas can do to stop it. That being said, can we cut this Arkansas defense a little bit of slack? Is there any defense in college football that has seen a schedule like this? Look at their last 5 games. What's the easy game here? Memphis? It's one of the best group of 5 teams in the country. They played Ole Miss, explosive offense, Notre Dame, Tennessee, Texas A&M. I mean, this team has been through the absolute gauntlet. So when we're looking at the Arkansas defensive numbers, we got to keep in mind there's a lot of defenses that would have terrible numbers if they played those 5 teams in a row like that. I want to be clear. I'm not implying that Arkansas's defense is good at all. I'm just saying we might be underselling them a little bit. There's a lot of defenses that would have gotten lit up with that kind of schedule. And we have to ask, is Auburn's offense any good? I mean, look, what I just said about Arkansas's defense, you can kind of say something similar about Auburn's offense. I mean, they played Oklahoma, one of the best defenses in the country, Texas A&M, one of the best defenses in the country. Missouri has a very strong defense. But this week 7 game against Georgia, this is a little bit concerning because Georgia's defense doesn't look very strong this year. That was a home game against a defense that's been giving up points. They were held to 10 points, 4.21 yards per play. In the second half, they couldn't do anything against Georgia. And this is an Auburn offense that needs to run the ball. They just lost their starting center, Connor Lew, for the season. Again, by no means am I implying Arkansas's defense is capable of making stops. Auburn's definitely going to be able to run the ball, but how explosive do we think this Auburn offense really is? I mean, if this game's a shootout, do we really expect Jackson Arnold to keep up with the Arkansas offense, which is just a wild unit? I don't think this Auburn offense is very good. And speaking of the Arkansas offense, let's flip it over to the other side of the ball. Auburn's defensive front has been way stronger than I expected to be. In fact, on paper, they're looking like one of the strongest run defenses in the country. They're second in success rate per rush, first in PPA per rush. They have, however, been a little bit vulnerable to the pass, 86th and 77th. And Taylor Green and this Arkansas offense, they are lighting it up on everybody. Look at those same last 5 games we were just talking about against some challenging opponents. Although defensively, Tennessee's injured, Ole Miss defense is having a down year. But still, in those last 5 games against this schedule, they're averaging over 30 points per game, success rate up close to 50%, over 7.1 yards per play. This Arkansas offense is as explosive as any other offense in college football. And Auburn, like I said, against the run, they've been rock solid. But look at their numbers against the pass in SEC play so far this year. 46.7% success rate per dropback. Struggling to get off the field. Quarterbacks are able to move the chains against this Auburn defense. And what has Auburn struggled with specifically on the defensive side of the ball? explosive plays, 106 in an explosive play rate allowed. Taylon Green is a walking explosive play machine. So Arkansas is going to score points on Auburn's defense because Arkansas scores points on anybody. They just hung, 42 on Texas A&M? This Arkansas offense scores on anybody. So they're going to score on Auburn, and I'm sure Auburn's going to score points back because they're going to run the ball. They're going to move the chains. But, I mean, are they going to keep up in a shootout? No, I don't think they are. I think Arkansas might win this one. I'm on Arkansas, but I got plus 2.5, which is long gone. If it's at 3 now, I don't think I can lay a full 3 with Arkansas. At 2.5, it's probably an efficient number. That's probably where it should be. Yeah, I think Arkansas can win this game. So yeah, I'm on Arkansas plus 2.5. Minnesota, Iowa. Feels kind of crazy to consider laying more than a touchdown in one of these Big Ten West games, but you know what? I said something similar a couple weeks ago in the Iowa-Wisconsin game. I got Wisconsin at plus 5. It closed at like a flat 3. I was feeling like the man. Final score was 37-0. An absolute beatdown. Now, Wisconsin is next level bad. But, yeah, I said the same thing. Like, how could you lay more than a field goal in a Big Ten West game? That's what I said. And they got beat 37-0. So I was wrong with that take back in week 7. This Iowa run game is looking pretty official. Look at their numbers in Big Ten play so far this year. Over 5.1 yards per carry, 47.8% success rate per rush, looking similar to the elite Iowa run game we saw last year. So, all right, Iowa's offense a little bit stronger than we perceived, and they're running the ball on some respected defenses. Obviously, Rutgers doesn't belong in that sentence, but this Iowa run game has to be respected. And do we even consider Minnesota's defense to be good? That's another question. They're 72nd in success rate, 41st in PPA per play. We've certainly seen them struggle on the defensive side of the ball a time or two this year. The thing is, the strength of this Minnesota defense is the front seven. I think this is a strong run defense. Where they're vulnerable is at corner, at edge rusher. Those are the pieces they lost from last year's team. So Iowa, as dominant as the run game looks, man, PJ Fleck, that's a good defensive front seven. I don't know if Iowa's going to be able to run the ball. I don't think Iowa's going to be able to bully this Minnesota defense around. And the way Iowa's offense is built, this is not really the unit to exploit weak corners. I mean, let's not pretend that Iowa's been throwing the ball. Look at Gronowski's numbers in those Big Ten games. The rushing numbers look great, but Gronowski's averaging 126.3 passing yards per game in those Big Ten games, and he has not been efficient throwing the ball. This is an offense that needs to run it, and Minnesota's defensive front seven is tough. I think they're able to limit Iowa offensively in this game. Again, Minnesota's defense hasn't been all that great this year, but this is still a PJ Fleck team. It's still a good run defense, and they're coming off – they looked excellent last week in the Nebraska game. They held Nebraska, who, by the way, is a pretty good offense, to 6 points under 4 yards per play in that one. Success rate under 36%. So, yeah, I mean, this Minnesota team, we all kind of wrote them off because they looked shaky early in the season. They had that game where they lost by like 2 touchdowns to Cal, and everyone was like, Minnesota sucks this year. Just wrote them off, right? Well, Minnesota's right there in the mix. They're sitting 3-1 in the Big Ten. Their only loss coming to Ohio State. A win here against Iowa, and Big Ten's right in the, and Minnesota's right in the conversation here in the conference. So we might have written Minnesota off a bit early, and especially in a matchup against Iowa with these ugly Big Ten West games, I think they're able to limit Iowa's run game. Iowa doesn't have the passing attack to exploit where Minnesota's weak. I think Minnesota can play a good defensive game in this one. The problem is on the other side of the ball. If you're asking me how I expect the Minnesota offense to move the ball and score points in Kinnick, the answer is I have no idea. I have no idea. This is not a good offense. They're 64th in success rate, 94th in PPA per play. I know this graphic doesn't really show it, but this is an offense that needs to run the ball with Darius Taylor, who I think is healthy. I was having trouble finding injury information on this game. So if there's injury updates in this one, I didn't see it posted on Twitter. I checked the usual spots I check. I couldn't find anything. So if there's injury updates in this game, leave them in the comments. I don't know how Minnesota moves the ball offensively in this one. So as much as I would love to take the big number with Minnesota, I just can't responsibly do it. What about an under, though? 39.5 is low, but remember, these Big Ten West games, we see some low-scoring games, 2 slow-paced football teams. Minnesota's really going to struggle to move the ball and score points in this one. And Iowa, if they want to score points, they're going to do it on the ground, and Minnesota's defense is strong enough to make them work for it. Could see some long drives from Iowa to get into the end zone. Under 39.5. How about it? Missouri, Vanderbilt. We finally saw this Missouri team go out on the road. Remember, they played like 7 home games in a row. We just saw Missouri play their first road game of the season last week, and the offense didn't look all that great. Yes, they scored 23 points and ended up getting the win against Auburn. They were held to under 4.1 yards per play. They couldn't do anything in that game. I mean, we're kind of seeing this Missouri offense come crashing back down to earth after what was an electric start. They're averaging over 45 points per game in their first 5. They're 5 home games against some questionable opponents. Their last 2 games, they've seen Alabama and Auburn. Now that we're getting deeper into SEC play, we're seeing this Missouri offense kind of come back to life. The good news is Vanderbilt, elite team, looking like a really elite team. Not so much on the defensive side. This isn't an elite defense. The strength of this Vanderbilt team is you can't get Pavia in that offense off the field. Defensively, this is not anything to write home about. Missouri should be able to run the ball in this game. They've got a very good running back. It's just been announced that Vanderbilt's star defensive lineman, Watara, he's getting surgery and he's going to miss the rest of the season. He hasn't really played at all this year. I think he came in for 1 game. He elected to get surgery, and instead of being questionable every single week, he's just going to get the surgery and call it a year, which is tough news for Vanderbilt. Their corner, Marlon Jones, he's listed as questionable. He's missed the last 2 games. Outside of that, I think everyone else is good to go. Their other 2 corners that were injured came back for Vanderbilt. So they're pretty healthy, but Missouri's got a superstar running back there in Hardy, and Vanderbilt's defense, they've held their own, but Missouri's going to be able to run the ball in this game. Not that Vanderbilt's defense is terrible against the run or anything. You look at their last 3 games against Utah State, Alabama, and LSU. They're allowing 4.35 yards per carry, success rate up over 42% per rush. So they're not terrible against the run, but Ahmad Hardy is really good, and Missouri might also be getting their starting guard, Logan Reichert, back. He hasn't played all year. I think he's supposed to be a starter, too, so they might be healthier on the offensive line. I'm not sure on that one. I read it somewhere. I was having a tough time confirming that. But regardless, I think Missouri's going to be able to hand the ball off and run the ball on this Vanderbilt defense. It's on the other side of the ball. I don't care how elite these Missouri defensive numbers look. 9th in success rate, 13th in PPA per play. Elite defensive numbers. They've been great defensively. Can anybody get Vanderbilt's offense off the field, though? This is looking like arguably the most efficient offense in college football. They're 4th in success rate, 4th in PPA per play. Let's give Missouri's defense some credit. They played a solid defensive game against Alabama. They were in a position to compete there. A couple bad calls went against them. They held Alabama to 4.4 yards per play, 40% success rate. But this Vanderbilt offense, man, what they did last week to LSU was so impressive. LSU didn't even play that poorly in the game. It's just Vanderbilt, that offense, 5.96 yards per play, success rate up close to 48%, 31 points in the game. It was against an LSU defense we all perceived to be pretty good. So at under a field goal, it has to be Vanderbilt. It looks like this one finally moved up to 3. So if you liked Vanderbilt, you should have already bet it. But yeah, it would only be Vandy for me here. Even at 3, I won't bet it at 3. But yeah, I don't know, at a field goal or less, I don't know how you make a case for Missouri. This Vanderbilt team, they're all bought in, man. That offense is clicking. That team believes they can win the national championship, and who am I to tell them they can't? So yeah, Vanderbilt at a field goal or less. San Diego State, Fresno State, Aztecs, back-to-back statement wins. Now, Colorado State's going through all kinds of stuff, and they've been a team that's much stronger at home, and Nevada's pretty terrible, but, I mean, they won decisively, and the offense came to life because that was San Diego State's defense has been good all year. It was the offense that was sputtering earlier in the season, and I mean, back-to-back games, they scored 45 and 44 points. So seeing the offense come to life, San Diego State is starting to turn some heads in the Mountain West. So will that offensive success continue on the road at Fresno here? Fresno's been a respectable defense so far this season, and we don't want to just forget that San Diego State, that offense was looking pretty ugly early in the season. On the year, San Diego State 65th in success rate, 57th in PPA per play. Fresno State's defense 50th and 89th. Again, look at San Diego State's offense. Look at their first 3 games. Just 17.7 points per game, 4.63 yards per play. The offense wasn't really working there. It's really the last 2 games where it's come to life. I personally think the last 2 games are more of a reflection of what San Diego State's offense is. I think Sean Lewis is a very creative offensive coach. People forget, I mean, this dude was at Kent State. They had Kent State winning all kinds of conference games. Kent State was putting up numbers. People kind of forgot about him because he went to Colorado under Coach Prime. And then last year, his first year with San Diego State, he didn't have a quarterback. So people kind of forgot that Sean Lewis, he knows how to scheme up an offense, and we're starting to see it work. I personally think the San Diego State offense we're seeing now is closer to what we're going to see moving forward. We do want to acknowledge that they've played a couple of really struggling teams. But speaking of playing struggling teams, can we look at the Fresno State defensive game logs this year? There's some bad offenses on here. They did play a good defensive game against Hawaii, and they deserve credit for that. Alejado threw 3 interceptions in the game. But, I mean, you got a home game against Nevada on here. That's one of the worst offenses in the FBS. You've got a home game against Southern. When Fresno State has seen respectable offenses, they have struggled. And what we saw in Week 7 against Colorado State, I mean, Colorado State, that offense looked broken. Remember, they fired the head coach. They've gone through multiple quarterbacks. They don't know what's going on over there at Colorado State. He gave up 49 points, 6.3 yards per play. Now, the final score is a little misleading, but they were struggling to make stops against Colorado State's offense, which has looked bad. So I think San Diego State can move the ball. I think that offense is just starting to click now. It's on the other side of the ball. This is where I think we might be looking at a little bit of a sell high spot for San Diego State. This defense, I mean, on paper, they're one of the best defenses in the country. Not just the Mountain West, the entire country. They're 3rd in success rate, 4th in PPA per play. This defense has looked excellent. Remember, this is a defense that brought 10 of its 11 starters back from last year. The San Diego State defense has been absolutely lights out. But it's important to point out, when we're talking about San Diego State's defense, who have they played? This team has played nobody. Who's the strongest offense that San Diego State has seen so far this year? Washington State or Cal? I suppose Cal's offense has looked pretty good here or there. I mean, they've played a lot of really bad offenses. Colorado State is broken. Northern Illinois, they can't move the ball at all. Nevada, one of the worst offenses in the FBS. Stony Brook, that's not even a good FCS offense. So, I mean, the San Diego State defense is good. It's right next to Boise State in terms of best defense in the Mountain West. The numbers might be a little bit inflated. In Fresno State, they've got an experienced quarterback there in E.J. Warner. They're coming off a bye week. I think they'll be prepared. I think Fresno State can move the ball on San Diego State. As far as betting this game, I kind of like the over. I like both teams to move the ball. The problem is numbers up at 47.5, and we're talking about 2 of the slowest paced teams in college football. I don't love the idea of taking over 47.5 in what might be the slowest paced game in the world. But I do think both quarterbacks can make throws. I think both offenses will be moving the football. So I guess my pick for the game is the over. The move in this one was to get on San Diego State early. If you were on this one early, you could have got San Diego State at -1.5, -2. It's at 3.5 now. And in my opinion, it's actually gone a little bit too far. At 3.5, I wouldn't even hate a sell high San Diego State spot and lean towards Fresno. But at the current number, give me over 47.5 with a slight lean towards Fresno, but don't even put that graphic up on the screen. Just over 47.5. BYU Iowa State, I'm on the clones in this one. I'm back in Matt Campbell. Iowa State, no team in college football needed the bye week more badly than Iowa State did. They had just lost both of their corners. Their star defensive tackle, Dominique Orange, went down. They also lost the safety, Cummings Coleman. All those injuries happened in like a 2-game span. So it was just a scramble on the defensive side of the ball. They got the bye week, and the 2 main corners are still out. They're out for the season. But that safety, Cummings Coleman, may be returning for this game. Their defensive tackle, Dominique Orange, who's one of the best players on the team, he may be returning for this game. They're both listed as questionable. But more importantly than just those 2 players, the replacement corners that are in there, they had a few weeks to get acclimated, and they are now the starting corners. They're not just thrown in there unexpectedly. So Iowa State had the week off to kind of catch their bearings on the defensive side of the ball. BYU's got a very strong run game, and I'm not suggesting Iowa State can completely shut that down, but they know what BYU's trying to do offensively. I think Matt Campbell will have his defense prepared for it. Keep in mind, we are still talking about a freshman quarterback here in Bear Bachmeier, who, credit to Bear Bachmeier, he's handled himself really well this year for a freshman, but his numbers in terms of passing efficiency, they're starting to come back down to earth in the last 2 games against Arizona and Utah. A 64.4 NFL passer rating, really not delivering throws from a clean pocket, just 169 passing yards per game in the last 2. So I think Iowa State, in terms of the defensive play calling, I think they have some flexibility to take away the run here for BYU. And keep in mind, this is a BYU team that's coming off back-to-back highly emotional games here. You got the double overtime win over Arizona, double overtime. Then you immediately have your rivalry game, the Holy War, one of the biggest games of the year for BYU, where they won a nail-biter there. No weeks off. You immediately go to Ames to play an Iowa State team that needs a win, that's had 2 weeks to prepare for it. It's just the letdown spot for BYU and a perfect spot for Iowa State to get right with a statement win against a good BYU team. On the other side of the ball, BYU's defense is strong, and they're strong against the run. Iowa State's going to struggle to run the ball in this game. But I've always liked Rocco Becht. He's an experienced quarterback. He's had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. He knows his team needs a win. I think Iowa State's going to move the ball a little bit in this game. I got Iowa State at -1.5. If it's under a field goal, I don't hate it. It's up to a juice 2.5 now. I'm sure that we would see buyback at 3 on the BYU side. It won't hit 3. But yeah, I think Iowa State wins this one and gets right. Alabama, South Carolina. We get to see a rematch of what was an amazing game last year. For those of you that didn't watch last year, I'm sure most of you did because this game was electric. So South Carolina scores. They go for 2 to tie the game. They don't get it, but they actually get the onside kick and get the ball back. And then Sellers had a shot at the end zone to win it. Alabama picked it off, but South Carolina, they missed the 2-point conversion to tie, then get the onside kick back, and then have a Hail Mary shot at the end zone. Great football game. That being said, not sure if we'll see a repeat of that here. This year's Alabama team definitely stronger than last year's Alabama team, and this year's South Carolina team is definitely weaker than last year's South Carolina team. The defense is still okay for South Carolina. They're 83rd in success rate, 22nd in PPA per play. They played a strong schedule. This is still a respectable defense, but this Alabama offense is a powerhouse. And South Carolina, what they've struggled with specifically on the defensive side of the ball, they're not getting cooked by big downfield throws or anything, which is good, but they can't get off the field. 49.9% success rate per dropback. And the reason that's concerning, that's exactly what Alabama does. They drop back to pass, they move the chains. They drop back to pass, they move the chains. In the 6 games since the Florida State opener, they've got a 55.5% success rate per dropback. That's elite. They drop back to pass, they move the chains. So what South Carolina is specifically struggling with is exactly what Alabama's been doing. And Ty Simpson, he had that rocky opener against Florida State. Since then, he's looking like arguably the best quarterback in college football. I mean, his numbers are excellent. Alabama's doing a good job of keeping him protected in the pocket. When he is experiencing some pressure, he's handling it well. He's delivering throws from a clean pocket. Now, if you're on South Carolina, the Alabama's right guard, Geno Vandermark, he's been added to the injury report. He's listed as questionable. So I guess maybe South Carolina disruptive at home. But the way Alabama's offense looked, South Carolina's defense is good. I'm sure they're going to be able to generate some stops, but it's hard to imagine Alabama's not going to get into the end zone a few times here. This offense is a powerhouse. And on the other side of the ball, I mean, to put it delicately, South Carolina is the worst offense in the SEC. I don't even think that's a hot take. I think even South Carolina fans would be like, yeah, we do. This offense is terrible. The offensive line has had injury problems. I don't even know who the starting offensive line for South Carolina is supposed to be at this point. They're 124th in success rate, 113th in PPA per play. Now, not that Alabama's defense has played flawlessly. In fact, Alabama's struggling against the run. If you look at their SEC games so far, they're allowing just under 6 yards per carry, 48% success rate per rush, 167 rushing yards per game. And this is just their SEC games. If you remember, Florida State was running the ball on them too. So this Alabama front seven, they have some injuries at linebacker. Maybe this team's vulnerable to the run. But here's the thing. In these SEC games where they're getting run on, it's not like they're getting lit up. They're allowing less than 20 points per game, 6.06 yards per play. And look at the teams. Georgia, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Tennessee. Georgia, electric offense. Vanderbilt, most efficient offense in the country. Missouri's even a sneaky good offense and a damn good rushing attack. Tennessee, electric offense. South Carolina's offense doesn't even belong in the same conversation as these teams. So, yeah, Alabama's defense, a little bit vulnerable to the run. That's probably a talking point we should put in our pocket and remember that for later in the season. But is South Carolina really the offense to exploit it? I'm going to have to lean towards no. I mean, personally, if we're talking about betting this game, I think this number should be 14 plus. The only argument you can make for South Carolina is that they be emptying the tank for this game. I mean, this is it. They're 3-4. They want this one. You would imagine for the remainder of the season, they want this one, and then they want the rivalry game against Clemson at the end. So maybe they're going to pull out the stops and leave it all on the field for this one. But after Alabama almost lost to this team last year, I doubt they're going to take South Carolina lightly here. So yeah, it's Alabama for me. It looks like this number has been bet down a little bit. So maybe some sharp action coming in on the South Carolina side. I'm going to have to go with the Tide. Give me Alabama minus 11.5. Illinois, Washington. I was really close to betting Washington in this one. A couple things kept me off. There's some injury concerns to the offensive line for Washington, and also the weather is making this one a little weird. If it wasn't for that, I really think Damon Williams could have a monster game here at home against this Illinois defense, which, I mean, this Illinois secondary, not only has it been dealing with injuries, but they've been struggling all year. They're 131st in success rate per dropback, 119th in PPA per dropback. And as you can see on the right side of this graphic, Washington's offense has been pretty good this year. And their schedule, man, they've just been all over the place. They had the big game at home against Ohio State. They immediately flew across the country to play Maryland. Then they flew back home to play Rutgers. Then they flew to the Big House to play Michigan. If you take a look at that schedule, I mean, their offense, they had one game at home against Rutgers where they really had a chance to just light it up, and they did exactly that. They averaged over 10.5 yards per play at home against Rutgers. So, I mean, they're at Maryland across the country, then they're at the Big House, and they're against Ohio State. This offense has really only had one opportunity to stretch its legs in the last month, and it was home against Rutgers, and they lit it up. This could be another one of those opportunities. Now, the offensive line is a little concerning. Their starting left tackle, Carver Willis, has been out the last 2 or 3 games. He's listed as questionable, so he might come back. So that sounds like good news. Well, if he doesn't come back, their backup left tackle, Max McCree, who's been starting in his spot, he got injured last week against Michigan. So if he doesn't come back, Carver Willis, the left tackle, they'll actually be down to their 3rd string left tackle. And their left guard, by the way, John Mills, he's missed the last couple games as well. He might be back. He's listed as questionable. So Washington's offensive line could be back at full strength. It could also be down to the 3rd string left tackle and backup left guard. So the offensive line, a lot of moving pieces there for Washington. And if you're thinking, well, Kyle, they lit up Rutgers, but Illinois' defense is better than Rutgers. Yeah, they're better than Rutgers, but by how much? I mean, have you watched Illinois play football recently? I mean, their last 4 games, they're allowing 39 points per game, over 6.2 yards per play, success rate up close to 53%. This defense has really been struggling. They really need to give Ryan Walters a call and get their guy back. Coincidentally, Ryan Walters is now the DC for Washington. This Illinois defense really hasn't been good. So if it wasn't for the question marks on the Washington offensive line and the weather, we're supposed to see rain in this one. And Damon Williams is a guy who relies on his athleticism. He throws the ball. I don't know if rain would, I don't know exactly how rain would affect his game. On the other side of the ball, Illinois can probably score right back on Washington. They've been very tough up front against the run. The strength of the Illinois offense has been Altmaier throwing the ball. Not sure how rain affects that offense either. There's just too many moving pieces in this one. I think Washington is a play at 3.5. I think there should be more like 4.5, 5. I think Washington could score 40-plus points if they have their healthy offensive line and if it wasn't for the weather. But with the offensive line question marks and rain, it's a weird one. Put up Washington minus 3.5 as my pick, but there's too many moving pieces here. Baylor, Cincinnati, the total sitting at 67.5, and honestly, that might not be high enough. We should see a shootout here. Talk about 2 fast-paced offenses. Baylor likes to throw the ball a lot. Cincinnati throws the ball a lot also. You take a look at the matchup on paper. May not look like Baylor has the huge edge offensively against Cincinnati's defense, but Cincinnati's defense hasn't been all that great, and we know Baylor can light the scoreboard up. On the season, they're 43rd in success rate, 37th in PPA per play. Cincinnati hasn't shown us much of a pass rush this year. In fact, they're towards the bottom of the country in terms of generating pressure. Sawyer Robertson with room to work. Not to mention, Bryson Washington's going to play, by the way. He was banged up. He's been upgraded to probable. That's their star running back, and Cincinnati can't seem to stop anybody on the ground either. In their last 4 games, they're allowing 4.69 yards per carry, over 48% success rate per rush. That's against Kansas, good offense, but Iowa State, UCF, Oklahoma State. I mean, Baylor's offense is probably more explosive than every offense on this list. So Baylor should be able to run the ball. Sawyer Robertson should have plenty of opportunities to make some big throws. And on the other side of the ball, I don't know if Baylor can make a single stop. I mean, the Cincinnati offense looks like a well-oiled machine this year. In fact, on paper, right behind Vanderbilt, this is probably the most efficient offense in college football so far. 6th in success rate, 5th in PPA per play. It looked like the Baylor's defense was showing signs of life there for a couple games. They came crashing down hard last week against TCU. They lost a corner, too. One of their corners didn't play against TCU, and he's been ruled out of this one. Baylor's kind of got the New Orleans Saints pass rush numbers in a sense where they blitz a lot, but it's not very successful. So they send a lot of blitzes. They don't generate a ton of pressure. Brendan Sorsby splits, excellent against the blitz, excellent when given a clean pocket. Yeah, Cincinnati should score a lot of points, too. I actually lean Baylor at the plus 3.5, but I think the move here would just be to take the over at 67.5. Should see a lot of scoring in this one. Texas, Mississippi State. We are really laying more than a touchdown on the road with Arch Manning in an SEC game. Why? This offense is 107th in success rate, 103rd in PPA per play. What has Texas shown us offensively that they should be more than a touchdown favorite in a road SEC game? Look, I know the Mississippi State defense hasn't been great at all. In fact, now that we've gotten into SEC play, they've really struggled. I mean, they're allowing 31.7 points per game, over 48% success rate, 6.6 yards per play. I get it. The Mississippi State defense is one of the worst, if not the worst, in the SEC. I get that. But have you seen the Texas offense? In their SEC games, they're averaging 4.8 yards per play. 31.4% success rate is terrible. Not to mention, we don't know if they're getting those two offensive linemen back that didn't play last week. Center Cole Hudson and left guard Connor Stroh both didn't play last week in the Kentucky game, and it was noticeable. I mean, Texas couldn't do anything against Kentucky. If it wasn't for the punt return, Texas loses that game outright. I had Kentucky plus 13.5 as my biggest bet of the day. No sweat. I mean, Kentucky probably should have won that game. Texas couldn't do anything offensively. Now, look, Mississippi State doesn't have much of a pass rush. Arch Manning should have some clean pockets to throw from in this game, but based on what we've seen this year, I mean, does that even scare us? Arch Manning hasn't even been good from a clean pocket. I mean, like I said, this Texas offense just gives us nothing to believe in. They haven't been good at all, and even against Mississippi State's defense, I still think they're going to struggle to move the ball, with especially possibly missing pieces on the offensive line. Yeah, I don't know how you lay more than a touchdown with Texas in a road SEC game. And if you're worried about Mississippi State's offense, I get it. The Texas defense has looked strong. They're 24th in success rate, 9th in PPA per play. And we are seeing the Mississippi State offense kind of come back to life here. Since we've gotten into SEC play, they went from almost 40 points per game in their first 4 games down to 21.3, 4.9 yards per play. So the Mississippi State offense hasn't looked all that great. But look, Texas defense, it's elite. I'm not trying to poke holes in it. In their SEC games, they're allowing just 16 points per game, 5.12 yards per play. But seriously, look who they've played. Florida, Oklahoma, Kentucky. Aren't those the 3 worst offenses in the SEC? And in the Oklahoma game, Mateer was bleeding out of his hand. On top of that, Texas just lost their best defensive player, defensive back Michael Taffy, or Taff. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I think it's Taffy. He's their leading tackler. I believe he's their captain. Just had thumb surgery. He's not going to play in this one. So they just lost one of their best defensive players on top of that. If you look at Texas' schedule, who's their toughest test as a defense? Week 1 on the road at Ohio State, right? Well, that was Julian Saint's first career start as a freshman. So there's that. But after that, who's their toughest test? Oklahoma, with a dude who was 16 days off of surgery playing quarterback. Oklahoma's offense isn't even good. I actually think on the road in Starkville in front of the Cowbells against this Mississippi State offense that has talent, I think this is their second biggest test of the year in terms of the defense only. I think Mississippi State might be able to score some points here. So yeah, I'm on Mississippi State. I think Texas is really going to have to work for this one. I think it comes down to the wire, just like the Kentucky game did. Bulldogs up. Texas A&M on the road in Death Valley Saturday night. This one should be excellent. Well, as I'm sure you know, LSU couldn't get it done last week on the road against Diego Pavia. They didn't get blown out or anything. They just, that defense couldn't get off the field. I don't know if anyone can get that Vanderbilt offense off the field, honestly. Final score was 31-24. And I think the LSU defense is probably the most concerning part of that game. Now, again, Vanderbilt looking like one of, if not the most efficient offense in college football. They give up 31 points, 5.96 yards per play. This is supposed to be the strength of the team. 47.8% success rate. They couldn't get off the field. So that's a concern, because things don't get easier for this LSU defense. They're now playing Texas A&M, who's one of the best offenses in the country. 30th in success rate, 21st in PPA per play on the season. At least this one's at home. That should certainly help. Death Valley on Saturday night under the lights, not the easiest place to go play. But this Texas A&M offense has been rolling. In their last 5 games, they're averaging over 33 points per game, over 6.6 yards per play. They did just lose their star running back, Le'Veon Moss, a couple weeks back, but the backup running back, Ruben, oh man, I can't think of his name. I didn't write it down, but I mean, he's awesome. He was supposed to be the starter last year, got injured, so they still have a ton of talent at the running back position. They also have a freshman they like a lot. So yeah, this Texas A&M offense is quite the powerhouse. Now, like I said, this game's at home, and LSU's defense so far this year at home has been lights out. Look at their 2 SEC games at home so far this year. They're allowing 10 points per game. 10. 4.6 yards per play, 41.1% success rate compared to their 2 road SEC games, which happen to be their 2 worst defensive games of the year. Now, obviously, we have to consider the opponents. In the home SEC games, they played Florida and South Carolina. On the road, they play Ole Miss and Vanderbilt. And another thing we have to consider is I don't think Weeks is playing. Their linebacker, that's one of their best defensive players. It doesn't look like he's going to play. I don't know if he's actually been ruled out, but I'm pretty sure I read that he was doubtful. So it doesn't look like Weeks is going to be out there. Still, even without Weeks, I personally think LSU's defense is capable of giving this offense some problems. They haven't seen the strongest defenses yet. Texas A&M, if you take a look at their schedule, they've gone on the road twice. First one was against Notre Dame, and they had a good offensive game against Notre Dame. At the time, Notre Dame was missing their star corner, Leonard Moore. And if you remember, Notre Dame was getting lit up by everybody back then. I mean, even Purdue put up a big number against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's defense has looked stronger later in the season, but back then, Notre Dame's defense wasn't looking very good. The first 2 games were home against UTSA and Utah State, bad defenses. Then they played Auburn, which is a respectable defense. That game was at home. They didn't put up a big number in that game. They were moving the ball, but they didn't light the scoreboard up in that game. I forget the final score. I think it was like 17-13 or something. Then what was their other road game? On the road against Arkansas, the worst defense in the SEC. They played Florida. That's a respectable defense, but that one was at home. So this LSU defense on the road in Death Valley Saturday night, I think we're going to see Texas A&M's offense sputter maybe for the first time all year. Now, on the other side of the ball, you might be thinking, Kyle, who cares? LSU's offense is terrible this year, and I get it if you're thinking that. They did get a couple players back that were injured. Their main wide receiver, Aaron Anderson, is back. Also, their starting left guard, Paul Mabenga, is back as well. That being said, they just took a loss. Their left tackle, Tyree Adams, went out last week in the Vanderbilt game, and it looks like he's not going to play. So they just lost their starting left tackle, which is certainly a blow when you're about to play Texas A&M. I will say this LSU offense does look slightly better in their first 2 SEC games. I mean, 5.56 yards per play, success rate down close to 36%. If you look at their last 2 SEC games, I know they didn't put up big numbers on the scoreboard, but up close to 6.8 yards per play. So they are moving the ball a little bit more efficiently as of late. The problems in the red zone are still there. This team just can't punch it in the red zone for some reason. And this Texas A&M defense, it's loaded. It's healthy now. They were missing some starters earlier. But in their 2 road games, they did struggle to make stops. Their 2 road games this year, Notre Dame and Arkansas, they allowed over 7 yards per play, 41 points per game. So let's not act like this Texas A&M defense is just flawless. I will say Notre Dame's offense and Arkansas's offense, both significantly stronger than LSU's. This is an awesome game. I personally bet the under at 49.5. It came down to 47.5. Now it's back up to 49.5. So it looks like some buyback at 47.5 on the over. I personally think both defenses are going to play well, and we're supposed to see rain. It's supposed to be a weather game, so I think the rain helps my under as well. We'll see. I'm on the under. At a full +3, I lean LSU, but I don't have a bet on the side. I'm on under 49.5. Michigan's in East Lansing to play Michigan State. We'll start with Michigan's offense against Michigan State's defense, and on paper, this looks like a mismatch because it is. I mean, Michigan's offense is actually starting to look pretty good. Michigan State's defense has really struggled. When you take a little bit of a closer look, all right, Michigan's offense is putting up some nice-looking numbers. The only time they saw a good defense was week 2 on the road at Oklahoma, and they were stifled. The 25% success rate is absolutely terrible. So the only time Michigan saw a good defense, they didn't do anything. In their other 6 games, the offense did look good. Who's the toughest defense Michigan has seen outside of Oklahoma? Who's the toughest defense there? A home game against Washington, maybe? Now, I'm not implying that Michigan State's defense is good or tough at all. I'm just saying, when it comes to this Michigan offense, really only had one test, and it didn't look good at all. And when it comes to Michigan State's defense, again, I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying it's almost the exact opposite. Look at their last 4 games. They're on the road at USC. They're on the road at Nebraska. UCLA is all of a sudden a powerhouse. That's their easy game. And then on the road at Indiana. So when we're looking at the matchup between Michigan's offense and Michigan State's defense, you look at this graphic here, the year-long numbers, it looks like a complete blowout matchup. You got to keep in mind that Michigan's played a lot of easy defenses, and Michigan State's defense has been through the gauntlet, these tough road games against elite offenses. So again, I'm not implying that Michigan State's defense can make stops against Michigan's offense. I'm just saying the gap between these two units might not be even close to this big. Michigan just took a loss, too, on the offensive line. Their starting left tackle, Evan Link, got injured in the Washington game. He's been ruled out. That being said, when it comes to injuries, they still have the advantage over Michigan State's defense. They're still injured as hell. Their nickelback, Aid Willie's still out. Safety Malik Spencer just got injured last week. So Michigan State's got plenty of injuries on the defensive side as well. The point I wanted to make is the gap between these two units might not be as crazy as this graphic looks. When you take into consideration the strength of schedule, and I mean, we know what Michigan State's going to do defensively. They're going to load up the box, do whatever they can to take away the run, force Bryce Underwood to make throws, which we know he's capable of. Bryce Underwood's actually been playing pretty well, but what were Bryce Underwood's 3 worst games of the year? His road games. In fact, his passing efficiency numbers don't look good at all on the road. Now, the Oklahoma game skewing them a bit, but he didn't look that efficient throwing the ball in the Nebraska game either. So Bryce Underwood hasn't looked nearly as good on the road. Well, I'm not implying Michigan State can make stops. I'm just saying, don't be surprised if Michigan State does string together a couple stops in this game. And on the other side of the ball, I mean, Michigan State's offensive line is so injured. So check this out. Their starting right tackle, Stanton Ramil, has been out since week 4. Their starting right guard, Christian Phillips, has been out since week 6. Their backup offensive tackle, Ashton Lipo, he came in as backup for the guy who got injured. He is now injured as well. So they have a third string offensive tackle starting and a backup right guard starting. So there's Michigan defensive front. Now, I will say Michigan's defense hasn't been all that elite this year, but this Michigan defensive front, you already know they're sending the house after Aiden Childs in this one. Michigan State doesn't pose much of a threat on the ground. So Michigan's going to be sending all types of blitz packages at Childs in this one. Now, I will say Aiden Childs actually has excellent numbers against the blitz so far this year, but with the injuries to the offensive line, it's hard to envision him having an amazing game against this Michigan defense. I will say, though, we have to give Aiden Childs and this Michigan State offense some credit. So check this out. They actually played an efficient offensive game last week on the road against Indiana's defense. And you might say, well, Kyle, they only scored 13 points in that game. Yes, they only scored 13 points, but check this out. They average over 5.9 yards per play, 45.9% success rate. They only punted twice in the entire game. They opened up the game with a 13-play, 7-minute field goal drive. Then they had a 12-play, 8-minute, 75-yard touchdown drive. They actually took the lead 10-7. In the second half, they had a 43-yard drive that ended in a missed field goal. Then they had a 60-yard drive that ended in a turnover on downs. They had a 54-yard field goal drive in the second half. They only punted twice in the entire game. So this Michigan State offense actually played pretty well on the road against Indiana, which is a defense that I consider to be better than Michigan. Aiden Childs was extremely efficient throwing the ball. Indiana blitzed the hell out of him too, and Michigan State's offensive line did a great job keeping him protected. So, yeah, Michigan State's offense actually gives me reason to be hopeful here. It's a rivalry game. Underwood hasn't played as well on the road. Give me the plus 14.5, man. Michigan State. Thanks for watching. Again, no live show, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We'll be live for the NFL show, 11 a.m. Eastern time on Sunday. See you then. Be sure to bet responsibly.